They say some people are born to build empires, others are born to set them on fire. I was the architect. She was the flame. My name is Marcus Chen, and for 15 years, I was one of the most sought after structural engineers in Chicago. I designed buildings that kissed the sky, bridges that defied physics, structures that would outlive generations. But I couldn't build a bridge strong enough to reach the woman I loved. When Sophia walked out of our apartment on that freezing November night, she didn't slam the door. She didn't yell. She just looked at me with those dark eyes that once saw everything in me and whispered 6 words that shattered my carefully constructed world. You're here, but you're never present. And you know what I did? I nodded, packed my things, and left. But before we get to what happened next, let me ask you something. Have you ever loved someone so much that you thought giving them space was the same as giving them love? Drop a comment below. Because what I learned cost me everything. Let me take you back. 14 years ago, a gallery opening in Lincoln Park. I wasn't supposed to be there. My colleague dragged me along because I'd spent 3 consecutive weekends reviewing blueprints for the Thompson Tower project. You need to remember what color looks like. Marcus, he joked. And then I saw her. Sophia Ramirez stood in front of a massive canvas, an explosion of crimson and gold, chaos and beauty intertwined. She was explaining her work to a small crowd, her hands moving like she was conducting an orchestra only she could hear. This piece is called Controlled Chaos, she said, because sometimes the most beautiful things come from learning to let go of control. Our eyes met across that gallery, and for the first time in my adult life, I couldn't calculate the outcome, couldn't predict the load-bearing capacity of what I was feeling. We were opposites in every way. She was spontaneous. I was methodical. She painted emotions in broad strokes. I drew precision in straight lines. She saw the world in feelings. I saw it in formulas. For 10 years, it worked. But here's what nobody tells you about being brilliant at what you do. It becomes who you are. And if you're not careful, it becomes the only thing you are. After I made senior partner at Morrison & Associates, the late nights became later. The emergency calls became emergencies. The just one more calculation became my religion. Sophia would set up candlelit dinners. I'd show up an hour late with Chinese takeout, my mind still stuck on bearing wall calculations. She'd invite me to her exhibitions. I'd promise to come, then send flowers with an apology card from my assistant. She'd try to talk about her day, her dreams, her fears, and I'd be there, physically present, mentally reviewing structural load reports. Here's a question for you. When was the last time you were truly present with someone you love? Not just in the room, but actually there. Think about it. The night she left started like any other. I came home at 11 p.m. Sophia was in her studio, our spare bedroom she'd converted into her creative space. I could hear music playing, something classical, emotional. I walked in with my briefcase still in hand. She was standing in front of a half-finished painting. It was different from her usual work. Darker, more fragmented, a figure standing in a doorway, perpetually entering but never quite arriving. "What do you think?" she asked without turning around. I glanced at it for maybe 5 seconds. "It's interesting, very abstract. I'm going to review some reports before bed. Big presentation tomorrow." She finally turned to face me. Tears were streaming down her face, not the dramatic kind, the quiet, exhausted kind, the kind that says someone has been crying alone for a very long time. "Marcus, do you even see me anymore?" I stopped, looked at her, really looked, and the honest answer, the answer that haunts me still, was no. I'd stopped seeing her years ago. She'd become part of the architecture of my life. Present, necessary, but unexamined. "Sophia, I'm tired. Can we not do this tonight?" "Do what? Have a conversation? Feel something together? Be married?" "I provide for us. I work hard so we can have this life." "I don't want this life." Her voice cracked. "I want you. The man who used to walk with me in the rain because I said it made the city look like a painting. The man who would wake me up at 2 a.m. because he figured out the perfect angle for light to hit our kitchen window. The man who saw me." I stood there, silent, because she was right, and I had no blueprint for fixing this. "You're here, but you're never present, and I can't keep loving a ghost." She walked past me, started packing a bag, and I did what I do best. I calculated the situation, assessed the damage. concluded that if she'd reached this point, no last-minute intervention would change the structural integrity of what we'd become. So I packed my own bag instead, walked out, gave her the space she seemed to need. I moved into a downtown apartment, threw myself deeper into my work, told myself this was better, cleaner, no messy emotions, no complications. For 6 months, I convinced myself I'd made the right decision. But life has a way of demolishing even the most carefully constructed delusions. It was a Tuesday, April 17th. I remember because I was presenting the Riverside Development Project to the City Council. My phone buzzed during the presentation. I ignored it. It buzzed again and again. During the break, I checked. 17 missed calls, all from Sophia's mother, Carmen. My hands went cold. I called back immediately. Marcus, Carmen's voice was shaking. It's Daniel. He's had a heart attack. They're rushing him into surgery at Northwestern Memorial. Sophia is... Marcus, she's asking for you. Daniel Ramirez, Sophia's father. The man who'd welcomed me into his family before Sophia even agreed to marry me. Who taught me to salsa dance at our wedding because every man should know how to make his wife feel like she's floating. Who'd called me Mijo, my son, even after Sophia and I separated. I left the presentation without a word. Drove to Northwestern, breaking every traffic law in Chicago. I found Sophia in the surgical waiting room, collapsed in a chair, her mother holding her. She looked smaller somehow, fragile in a way I'd never seen. When she saw me, something broke across her face, relief, pain, anger, love, all at once. Marcus. Just my name. But the way she said it contained our entire history. I sat beside her. For the first time in 6 months, we were in the same space, and the air between us was electric with everything we hadn't said. They're saying it's a massive myocardial infarction, Carmen explained, her accent thick with stress. Multiple blockages. They need to do immediate bypass surgery. Who's the surgeon? I asked. Dr. Patterson. She's the best cardiac surgeon on staff, they said. We waited. Minutes felt like hours. Carmen prayed in Spanish. Sophia stared at the wall, her hands twisting a paint-stained cloth she'd pulled from her bag, a habit she had when she was anxious. Without thinking, I reached over and placed my hand over hers. She stiffened. Then, slowly, her fingers intertwined with mine. We didn't speak. We just held hands like we were both drowning, and the other was the only thing keeping us afloat. Dr. Patterson emerged 3 hours later. Her expression was carefully neutral, in that way medical professionals have when the news isn't good. The surgery went as well as could be expected, but Mr. Ramirez's heart was more damaged than the initial scans showed. We've stabilized him, but the next 72 hours are critical. There's significant inflammation, and we're monitoring for post-operative complications. Sophia's hand tightened around mine so hard I thought bones might break. I didn't pull away. Can we see him? Carmen asked. In about an hour, ICU. 2 visitors at a time, 10 minutes each. When the doctor left, Sophia finally looked at me. Her eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted, but there was something else there. Something that looked almost like, "Thank you for coming," she whispered. "I know you didn't have to." Sophia, my voice came out rougher than intended. There's nowhere else I'd be. Here's a question that haunts me. How many moments do we waste staying away from the people we love because pride tells us we don't belong there anymore? Comment below if you've ever felt this. For the next 3 days, I barely left the hospital. I took leave from work, something I'd never done, not even for our honeymoon. I brought Carmen coffee. I made sure Sophia ate, even when she insisted she couldn't. I sat with them during the long hours when Daniel drifted in and out of consciousness. And slowly, something shifted. On the second night, around 2 a.m., Sophia and I were alone in the waiting room. Carmen had finally agreed to go home and rest. "Remember when we first moved into the apartment?" Sophia said suddenly, her voice small in the empty room. "You spent 3 hours calculating the perfect height to hang my paintings. You measured angles, light trajectories, everything." I remembered. I'd driven her crazy with my precision. But when we finished, her art had never looked more beautiful. "You said my work deserved to be seen correctly," she continued. "That was the moment I knew I'd marry you, because you saw what mattered to me as something worth getting exactly right." Sophia, when did we stop doing that? Caring about what the other person needed with that kind of precision? I didn't have an answer. Or maybe I did, and it was too painful to say out loud. I got lost in my work, I finally admitted. I thought providing was the same as loving, that if I built a secure life for us, that would be enough. But I forgot to build time, to build presence, to build us. She looked at me then, really looked, the way she used to when we first met. I stopped showing you my paintings because I convinced myself you wouldn't care. But the truth is, I stopped inviting you in. I built walls too, Marcus. I just built mine out of resentment instead of work. At 4:37 a.m. on the third day, alarms screamed through the ICU. Daniel was coding. Medical staff flooded his room. Sophia tried to rush in, but a nurse held her back. We watched through the window as they worked. Compressions, medications, the organized chaos of people fighting death. I held Sophia as she sobbed into my chest, her entire body shaking. Carmen arrived minutes later, and I held them both. They stabilized him. But Dr. Patterson's face was grim. There's a blood clot. It's blocking blood flow to part of his heart. We need to go back in immediately, but I have to be honest with you. Given his weakened state, the survival rate for a second surgery within 72 hours is less than 40%. Carmen made a sound like the world was ending. Sophia went absolutely still. And if you don't operate, I asked, he won't survive the next 6 hours. Sophia looked at her mother, at me, at the doctors. Do it. Do whatever you can, please. This wait was different, worse, because now we knew too much. We'd seen how fragile Daniel was, how close we'd already come to losing him. Sophia paced. Carmen prayed. I found myself doing something I hadn't done in 20 years. If you want the next part continued in the same tone and pacing, just say continue as is. I prayed too. Not because I was suddenly religious, but because there, in that waiting room, with Sophia's life hanging in the balance along with her father's, I realized how little control I actually had. How all my calculations and precision meant nothing against the chaotic unpredictability of life. 7 hours later, Dr. Patterson emerged. This time, she was smiling. He made it. The clot is gone. His vitals are stabilizing. I won't say we're out of the woods, but I think he's going to pull through. Sophia collapsed, just dropped to her knees, sobbing with relief so profound it shook her entire body. I knelt beside her, held her, and for the first time in years, I let myself feel everything I'd been holding back. The fear, the love, the regret, the desperate hope that maybe, somehow, we could find our way back to each other. Daniel Ramirez was a stubborn man. The doctors said he'd need 6 weeks of recovery before going home. He was walking the halls within 10 days, charming nurses and terrorizing physical therapists with his insistence on doing more than recommended. Sophia and I fell into a routine. She'd come in the mornings with sketches to show her father. I'd come in the evenings after work. Sometimes our visits overlapped. Sometimes we'd sit together by his bed, and Daniel would watch us with those knowing eyes of his, saying nothing but seeing everything. One evening, about 2 weeks into his recovery, I arrived to find Daniel alone. Sophia had stepped out to take a call about an upcoming gallery showing. "Mio," he said, gesturing for me to sit. "Come, we need to talk." I pulled up a chair, and he studied me with the intensity he usually reserved for Domino's strategy. "You know what I learned, almost dying?" he said. "That the heart, this stupid, stubborn muscle, it knows things the brain refuses to admit. Daniel, let an old man talk. I don't have the energy to argue." He smiled, but there was seriousness beneath it. "You love my daughter. She loves you, but you're both so busy protecting yourselves that you're building walls instead of bridges. It's not that simple. It never is. You think Carmen and I never fought? Never wanted to walk away? 43 years of marriage, Marcus? You know what held us together? Not love. Love is easy. It's choosing to stay that's hard. It's choosing to show up even when every part of you wants to retreat into your fortress of certainty." He reached over and gripped my hand with surprising strength. "You're a brilliant man. You build things that last. But you forgot that relationships need maintenance too. They need renovations. They need you to show up with your tools and fix what's broken instead of abandoning the whole structure because of a few cracks." 3 weeks after Daniel's surgery, Sophia had her gallery opening, the one she'd been working toward for 2 years, the one I'd never asked about during our marriage. Daniel was still in the hospital, but improving daily. Carmen was with him that evening. Sophia had invited me to the opening with such careful casualness that I knew how much it mattered. "You don't have to come," she'd said. I know you're busy. Sophia, I'll be there. The gallery was in West Loop, a converted warehouse space with industrial ceilings and exposed brick. Sophia's art covered every wall, an explosion of color and emotion that made the space feel alive. But it was the centerpiece that stopped me cold. A massive canvas dominated the center of the room. It showed a figure, recognizable as me, though abstracted, standing in a doorway. But unlike the painting I'd barely glanced at 6 months ago, this figure was stepping forward, reaching out. And on the other side, a burst of color and light, Sophia's signature style, reaching back. The title card read, "The Bridge Between Us." Sophia appeared at my elbow, nervous energy radiating from her. "What do you think?" I couldn't speak, because I understood, looking at that painting, everything she'd been trying to tell me. Everything I'd been too blind to see. "It's about the distance we create," she explained softly, "and the courage it takes to cross it. I started this painting the night I left. I've been working on it ever since, trying to understand, trying to see if there was still a path forward." Is there? My voice was barely a whisper. A path forward? She looked at me then with those dark eyes that once saw everything in me, still saw everything in me. "I don't know, Marcus, but I'm tired of standing still. I'm tired of being angry. I'm tired of missing you while you're standing right next to me." We left the gallery early, walked along the river, the Chicago skyline glittering above us like a constellation of my life's work. "I was wrong," I said finally, "about everything. I thought being good at my job meant being good at life. I thought providing meant loving. I thought control was the same as safety." "And I was wrong to expect you to be something you're not," Sophia replied. "You're methodical, precise. That's not a flaw, Marcus. That's who you are." I fell in love with the man who sees the world in angles and equations. I needed you to see me too, to apply that same attention, that same care, to us. I stopped looking, I admitted. I stopped seeing the woman I married and just saw the furniture of my life, something stable and unchanging that I could depend on without effort. And I stopped showing you my real self. I got scared that if I asked for attention, I'd be demanding too much. So I stopped asking, built resentment instead of bridges. We stopped walking, stood there on the riverbank as boats passed and the city hummed around us. "I want to try again," I said, "but different this time. I want to show up, Sophia, really show up. Not just physically, but present, engaged. I want to ask about your work and actually listen to the answer. I want to be there for openings and failures and everything in between. And I want to let you in," she said. "Stop punishing you for past absences. Meet you halfway instead of building walls and wondering why you can't climb them." "Couples therapy?" I suggested. She laughed, the first real laugh I'd heard from her in months. "God, even your romantic gestures are practical." "I'm an engineer, Sophia. I build things. Let me learn to build this. Build us. With help." She took my hand, squeezed it. "Okay, but Marcus, I need you to know if we do this, we do it right. No half measures. No falling back into old patterns. We architect this relationship from the ground up." I smiled at her choice of words. "Deal. And Sophia, thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up on a project that seemed unsalvageable." Daniel came home from the hospital 5 weeks after his second surgery. His recovery was remarkable. Doctors called him a medical miracle. Daniel called it stubbornness and his wife's cooking. Sophia and I didn't move back in together immediately. We dated. Like actual dates. I'd pick her up at her studio. We'd try new restaurants, go to museums, walk through the city we'd both lived in but never really explored together. We went to therapy every Thursday at 6 p.m. No exceptions. Not for work emergencies. Not for gallery openings. Not for anything. I learned to ask questions and wait for the full answer. To put my phone away during conversations. To be present not just in body but in attention. Sophia learned to communicate her needs directly instead of hoping I'd intuit them. To appreciate my methodical nature instead of resenting it. To see my precision as love, not coldness. It wasn't perfect. We fought. We stumbled. Old patterns would creep back in, and we'd have to consciously correct course. But we were building something new. Something stronger for having been broken and carefully reconstructed. On a Sunday afternoon in October, 8 months after Daniel's heart attack, he invited Sophia and me to their home for dinner. After the meal, he asked us to follow him to his workshop, a garage space where he'd spent decades working on furniture projects. He pulled a sheet off something in the corner. A custom piece, a desk with an integrated easel. One side was clean lines and measured angles. The other was curved, organic, artistic. Where they met, the two styles woven together into something beautiful and unified. I built this while I was recovering, Daniel said. My doctor said I needed projects to keep my mind occupied, so I built this. For you two. Dad, Sophia's voice caught. It's a workspace for both of you, so you can work side by side. So Marcus can do his calculations, and Sophia can do her sketches, and you can both look up and see each other. Remember each other. Build together. Carmen appeared in the doorway, smiling through tears. He wanted it to be perfect. Made me help him measure everything 3 times. I looked at this man, this father who'd welcomed me into his family, who'd almost died, who'd watched his daughter's heart break and then worked to help mend it, and felt something crack open in my chest. Thank you, I managed. Daniel, He pulled me into a hug, whispered in my ear. You build good buildings, Mijo. Now you're building a good life. I'm proud of you. I proposed to Sophia 3 months later, New Year's Eve, but not like before. Our first engagement had been planned to perfection. Reservation at the city's best restaurant, ring hidden in champagne, photographer secretly positioned to capture the moment. This time, I took her to the half-finished Riverside Development Project, the building I'd been working on when she left, the one I'd abandoned my presentation for to rush to the hospital. We stood on the exposed 40th floor, construction materials around us, the city sprawling below. I brought you here because this building represents something, I said. When your father had his heart attack, I left this project mid-presentation. For years, I thought work was the most important thing, that buildings and bridges and structures were what mattered. But standing here now, I realize this building will stand for maybe 100 years. Maybe 200 if we're lucky. But what we're building together, that's a legacy that extends beyond any timeline I can calculate. I took out a ring, not hidden, not as a surprise, just offered, honestly, in the open. I'm not asking you to marry me again because I think we can recreate what we had. I'm asking because I want to build something new with you, something that honors who we were, acknowledges who we became, and imagines who we could be together. Sophia Ramirez, will you help me architect a life where I show up every single day? She laughed, cried, and kissed me all at once. Yes, but only if you promise that when we fight, and we will fight, you won't retreat. You'll stay. You'll work through it. I promise, no more walking away. Then yes, 1,000 times yes. We were married 6 months later, small ceremony. Daniel walked Sophia down the aisle with Carmen at his side. My best man was my therapist, a joke that made everyone laugh, and also wasn't really a joke. Our vows were different this time. We promised presence, not perfection. Effort, not ease. We promised to show up to the hard conversations, to schedule regular check-ins like they were business meetings, to never assume we knew what the other needed without asking. Daniel gave a speech at the reception. His voice was still a little weaker than before the heart attack, but his spirit was unbreakable. Marriage, he said, raising his glass, is not about finding someone you can live with. It's about finding someone you can't imagine rebuilding your life without, even when the foundation cracks. Marcus, Sophia, you've shown all of us that sometimes the strong structures are the ones that broke and were repaired with intention. May your rebuilt foundation support you through all the earthquakes life will bring. So, what happened after she said she couldn't stand me and I left without a word? Life reminded me that precision without presence is just geometry, that brilliance without connection is just isolation, that building a life means more than constructing a career. Sometimes it takes almost losing someone, not just once, but watching them almost lose someone they love to understand what really matters. Sophia and I have been remarried for 2 years now. We work at the desk Daniel built, side by side. I still get lost in calculations sometimes. She still gets absorbed in her art. But now we set timers. We check in. We ask, are you here? Are you present? And when one of us isn't, the other gently calls them back. Daniel calls it the heart blueprint, his name for what we built from the rubble of what we broke. A structure designed not to be perfect, but to be maintained, renovated, loved. Last week, Sophia finished a new painting. It shows two figures building a bridge together, their hands meeting in the middle. It's called Precision and Passion, the Architecture of Us. It hangs above the desk her father built. A reminder that the strongest things we build are the relationships we refuse to abandon, even when every calculation suggests we should. So I'll ask you one final time. What are you building in your life? And who are you building it with? Comment below. Share this story if it resonated. And remember, sometimes the greatest architecture isn't in the structures we design, but in the connections we choose to maintain.